Think about this for a second. There's a bunch of guys on a small boat. They're crossing a lake, a big lake that they're familiar with. And some of them are professionals on that lake. And despite all of their, and maybe because of all their experience, a storm of wind happens that is so great they're sure that this is the end. But they don't know who's with them in the boat. We really thought we knew him as we answered his call, and we followed. A mismatched band of men were we sailing off into tomorrow. I never knew a man who worked so hard and spend themselves like him. And then at last I saw him finally lay down, as all light was growing dim. And the darkness came, as did the wind. And that lake became a beast that howled and roared and reached for us, 13 mortals for its feast. Now all I believed just seemed like a lie, and nothing made any sense. Waves of terror swept over my soul, each one even more intense. I felt my way to the back of that boat to where I'd seen him lay. So human was he that in his fatigue, despite the pounding waves, he slept. Like a man unaware there was any reason to fear. Like one who knew just where he was going and what he was doing here. Then this angry thought broke through my fear as my panic reached its peak, and it erupted out as this hostile question. I could not help but speak. "We're going to die!" I cried out loud to the one who led us there. "You said let's go over, but we're going under, and how is it that you don't care?" And at first, he said nothing, but he seemed to be struggling with a mind not fully awakened. Straight from his dream, right into our nightmare. Still, he wasn't the least bit shaken. He stood up suddenly, and he steadied himself. With one hand, he held to the ropes. Like holding the reins of a stallion, he rode that rising and falling boat. One hand on the ropes and one hand in the air as we cowered along the sides. He confronted the beast that caused us to cower, so frightened and so terrified. And the words that he spoke, they were not a request. And they were not a victim's plea, and his words were not louder than the howl of the wind or the roar of Galilee. But his words carried power, an undeniable power that even the force of the wind had to flee. Mightier than the thunder of great waters, mightier than the breakers of the sea. He spoke to that storm like it was a dog, and his command muzzled its jaw, and it fled with its tail tucked in its legs as we huddled in silence and awe. Everything was quiet upon hearing his words, and water and the earth and the sky. But none were quiet, speechless as we, who just witnessed this with our eyes. This man who took lordship over nature, for whom nature humbly complied, then turned his gaze upon us little men just beginning to slowly rise. "Why were you frightened?" he asked us. How is it that you had no faith? We had no answer to give him. Looking back, we could only say that we were afraid of what was against us because we did not realize what manner of man it was that we followed and trusted with our very lives. We had no answer for his question of us, but we had questions of our own, and someone finally spoke the words that still echo in my soul. What manner of man indeed is this? That is still more than I can even know.